A very dark and heavy cloud of deep sorrow is currently hanging over the entire northeastern region of Nigeria following a highly coordinated, terrifying and completely devastating security breach that has struck the very heart of the military's frontline defense in Borno State. In what can only be described as a deeply tragic and heartbreaking turn of events, this first week of March 2026, heavily armed non-state actors launched a massive, simultaneous invasion on multiple military forward operating bases located in the highly volatile Gwoza district. The sheer scale, precision and ferocity of this nighttime assault have sent massive shockwaves across the entire nation, leaving brave Nigerian soldiers in absolute tears as they mourn the sudden loss of their brothers in arms and watch their defensive strongholds go up in flames. According to deeply concerning verified field reports from the region, the attackers, who are strongly suspected to be heavily armed fighters affiliated with the Islamic State West Africa province, arrived in massive numbers under the cover of absolute darkness. They came riding on a massive convoy of transport vehicles and motorcycles, completely surrounding the Nigerian Army's base in the quiet rural town of Ngoshe before unleashing a terrifying wave of overwhelming firepower. The soldiers stationed at the base were completely caught off guard by the sheer magnitude of the ambush, but they immediately fought back with everything they had, engaging the invaders in a massive, intense and heavily contested tactical battle that lasted for several grueling hours in the dead of the night. In a deeply agonizing and heavily emotional moment that no soldier ever wants to face, the surviving troops were forced to make the incredibly difficult tactical decision to retreat from their own base to avoid a total and complete tragedy. As the brave men fell back into the surrounding darkness, they had to witness the absolutely heartbreaking sight of the insurgents storming their sanctuary, looting critical military hardware, and seizing massive caches of defense equipment and essential ammunition. To make matters infinitely worse, the attackers then proceeded to systematically set the military base completely on fire, sending massive plumes of thick black smoke into the night sky that could be seen for miles around. The emotional and psychological toll of this massive setback cannot be overstated in any way. Reports from the ground indicate that several surviving soldiers broke down in absolute tears, deeply traumatized by the painful loss of at least 9 of their brave colleagues in that single location, alongside a highly respected local community religious leader who was also sadly caught in the terrifying crossfire. However, the absolute nightmare of that terrifying Tuesday night did not just stop at the Ngoshe base. In a terrifying display of massive strategic coordination, another large faction of the exact same terror group simultaneously launched a highly aggressive assault on a second military base located further north in the town of Pulka, which is also situated within the heavily contested Gwoza district. The attack on the Pulka base was equally devastating and completely ruthless, resulting in the tragic loss of at least 5 more brave soldiers, including a highly respected commanding officer who fought to his absolute very last breath to protect his men and secure the facility. This massive double tragedy brought the total number of military casualties to at least 14, making it one of the absolute darkest days for the Nigerian Armed Forces in the year 2026. As the massive sounds of heavy defense artillery and rapid exchanges echoed through the night, a massive wave of absolute panic and sheer terror completely engulfed the surrounding civilian communities. The local villagers in Ngoshe and Pulka, quickly realizing that their primary line of defense had been completely compromised and that the military base was burning to the ground, immediately knew that they were in massive, unimaginable danger. Families were abruptly and violently awakened from their sleep, hastily grabbing whatever little belongings they could carry before fleeing completely into the harsh, unforgiving terrain of the Mandara Mountains and the dense surrounding bushes to hide from the advancing threat. This massive escalation in violence and the terrifying kidnapping of vulnerable civilians has plunged the entire Borno state into a massive state of high alert and deep national mourning. As we continue to carefully unpack the massive, far-reaching implications of these coordinated military base attacks and deeply analyze exactly what the defense headquarters in Abuja is currently planning to do next to secure the region, it is absolutely vital for every single concerned citizen to stay deeply and fully informed about the rapidly changing security realities of our great nation. If you are finding this detailed, highly factual breakdown informative and you want to continue receiving the absolute most accurate, well-researched and highly engaging updates on the massive fight against insurgency in Nigeria, please take a very quick second to like this video and subscribe to the channel right now. By subscribing and quickly turning on your notification bell, you are massively supporting our mission to bring the absolute truth to light, and you completely ensure that you will never miss out on any major, highly critical developments regarding our national security, the continuous bravery of our frontline troops, and the complex political responses that shape our daily lives. Your active engagement completely helps us push these incredibly important stories to a much wider global audience. So please hit that subscribe button right now as we dive straight back into the massive military and humanitarian response to this horrific Borno crisis. Military intelligence experts strongly suggest that these highly coordinated, highly destructive attacks on forward operating bases are part of a massive, deeply desperate new strategy by the insurgents. By completely destroying the physical military infrastructure and seizing heavy tactical transport, these terror groups are actively trying to heavily stretch the Nigerian military's rapid response capabilities, completely limit their ability to quickly bring in heavy reinforcements, and artificially create massive, ungoverned rural spaces where they can operate with absolute, terrifying freedom. Under the massive ongoing operations of Operation Hadin Kai, the National Armed Forces have been aggressively pushing much deeper into the absolute deepest, most dangerous insurgent strongholds across the arid northeast this entire year. The military leadership strongly believes that these recent highly aggressive attacks on remote bases are actually a massive sign of pure desperation from terror groups that are slowly but surely being heavily choked out of their traditional safe havens. The absolute reality of fighting a highly asymmetrical conflict in the incredibly difficult, heavily forested and deeply porous border terrains of Borno State means that absolute massive victories are often tragically heavily mixed with deeply painful setbacks. The military is dealing with deeply complex logistical challenges, massive intelligence gathering hurdles, and the absolute constant threat of heavily explosive devices, such as the deeply tragic incident in early January when 9 brave soldiers lost their lives when their military convoy struck a hidden landmine near the village of Bindundu. Borno State sadly remained the absolute massive epicenter of a brutal 17-year-long insurgency that has violently claimed tens of thousands of innocent lives and completely displaced over 2 million vulnerable people from their ancestral homes. The residents of Ngoshe, Pulka, and countless other deeply rural farming communities are incredibly hardworking, deeply resilient Nigerians who just absolutely want to live in massive peace, successfully cultivate their farmlands, and provide a safe, secure, and happy future for their young children. Yet they constantly find themselves heavily caught in the terrifying crossfire of a massive, incredibly complex conflict that has defied multiple political administrations and massive international interventions. When brave local farmers are simply too terrified to go to their fields because of the absolute massive fear of being abducted or violently attacked in the bushes, the entire nation heavily feels the impact through absolutely skyrocketing food prices and completely massive agricultural supply deficits in the local markets. As we deeply look toward the massively uncertain future of this security situation, it is absolutely crystal clear that the federal government must rapidly adopt a much more heavily robust, deeply holistic approach to totally and completely eradicate this massive terror menace. Relying absolutely solely on kinetic military action has massively proven to be deeply insufficient in totally securing the incredibly vast, heavily ungoverned universal spaces that define our borders. Security experts are massively advocating for the rapid, heavy deployment of much more advanced technological surveillance, massive international intelligence sharing with neighboring countries, and the absolute deep empowerment of massive local community-based intelligence networks who truly understand the local terrain. The deeply heartbreaking tears of the incredibly brave soldiers in Borno and the terrifying massive flight of the local villagers must serve as an absolute massive final wake-up call to totally and completely revamp the nation's entire rural security architecture. We will continuously and aggressively monitor the massive ongoing military deployments across the Gwoza district and bring you every single verified, highly crucial detail as this absolute massive national security story continues to rapidly develop.